Welcome back to Keepin' the Comic, and we're jumping back into Venom War Carnage with issue number 3 here. And it is here where we find out what really happened between Carnage and Meridius before we saw them together in the main Venom War series. How in fact, Meridius was able to set up the dominoes that truly led to the Venom War, and we also see why the Carnage that we've been seeing so far in the main Venom War series has been a little bit different, even though we didn't really realize it the entire time. Now, when we pick things up, we see Carnage, who as a reminder had just been stabbed by Meridius through the chest, getting helped up by Meridius. Now, Carnage did not expect out of all people that he would be the one behind the K project. Now, Carnage is also a little confused because he thought that he had killed Meridius way back when he had destroyed Meridius's garden, but Meridius lets him know that all he did was rip Meridius into pieces, which ultimately just sent him back to the beginning of time, which is not entirely true because it was actually the other Eddie Brock, Tyro, Wild, Bedlam, and our Eddie that has sent him back to the beginning of time when they were stuck in the time stream. So Carnage, believing that practice makes perfect, decide to try and finish the job by attacking Meridius. But Meridius fights back because, as he puts it, he's been waiting since the beginning of time and he is not going to let Carnage stop him now. So as Carnage continues to attack, Cletus Cassidy is remaining silent as Carnage says, "If I had all the time in the world, I would not be hiding beneath it. I would run it." But Meridius, knowing Carnage, understands that all Carnage really would do is destroy it. So Meridius has finally had enough with this fight and decides to rip Carnage's head off clean. He lets Carnage know that he just wants to talk and how he knows Carnage has questions, and if he calms down, he will answer them. So Carnage, the talking head now, asks Meridius if it was him. The weapons, all the K chemical nonsense, if it was all him. So Meridius lets him know, yes, I have been waiting, planning since the beginning of time, how he has been laying dormant through most of it. For the first millennium, he made sure not to disturb the past, but how some years ago, he realized that the future that he wanted would not happen unless he made some changes. How we met a man from the future, his future, how that future was not the Eden that he had planned for. So being curious, and with this man having the husk of a symbiote, he decided to take his mind. And this is where we find out that this was actually Dylan Brock that he's talking about. Now, it's unclear if this was the Dylan Brock that we've seen in the current Venom issue right now. It is also a tie-in to Venom War, the one that just met with Doctor Strange and made a deal with Chthon, because if it is, they are ultimately screwed. But based on what he says next, it allows me to believe it possibly could be, but it's not entirely clear at the same time. So Meridius mentions how he saw the destruction, a world that was lifeless and cold. He saw humanity fight. He saw the half machines, the half symbiotes. He felt the poison that they used to kill their enemy. Agony, as he explains it, like he has never experienced before, nor as he's experienced after. How he was hurt, he was humbled, but in that disgrace, he saw potential. It was in that moment when that poison that he felt, he realized that he could actually use it, which is what he did. He used it to create the K project, as the humans call it. So he then explains to Carnage to think of it as Clintar, a life essence, deadly or life-given, black or white, but it has many potential applications, as you have seen, referring to the zombies that he's created as well from it. Then he mentions how they came up with most of them. So when he walks through the door, we see humans, or what we think are humans. This is the they that he was talking about. Living people piled on top of each other, all looking like they are stuck together in what looks like a garden that he has created. Like he said, they are the ones that are creating this chemical. Meridius is explaining how he's surprised that humans would not be bothered by what he's creating, this potential enslavement and destruction, as he calls it. How he expected them to refuse, but instead they heard his sales pitch, and even though they didn't need to hear it, they went along with it. What he has learned is that humanity will happily contribute to their demise as long as it makes money in the process. Now, Cletus, who has not spoken this entire time, starts speaking with the Carnage symbiote. Cletus doesn't like how things look. Number one, they're in the garden where all the K chemical stuff is that could hurt them. He's looking at the garden and he's like, the only god that is here right now is certainly not the Carnage symbiote. But Carnage thinks Cletus is wrong because the symbiote thinks that if he could have this power, it would be able to rule everyone. Cletus just thinks that Meridius is playing with him and that they need to get out of there, while Carnage thinks it's too soon because they are so close. But Cletus recognizes that Meridius wants something from him, which is then when Meridius says to Carnage, are you still listening to him? Are you still allowing your mortal host temporary need to influence you? Which is kind of funny because technically Cletus is not human, right? Because Carnage did create him. Let's move on. It's so easy to let their fleeting desires direct your destiny and later, as he says, purpose. Now, Meridius is telling Carnage how they could change the world, but there is one thing that Meridius wants to know from Carnage. Does it have a way to kill Eddie? Does Carnage have a way to kill Eddie? So Carnage retorts and says, and you don't? So Meridius flips back again. He is like, perhaps I do, but I like to be prepared. How would you kill him? Do you have a weapon? Which is interesting that Meridius would ask this, considering that technically Meridius is still Eddie, which is why Carnage is like, did I miss the part where I agreed to help you? So Meridius tells him, I have ways of making you talk, but I would prefer to keep it civil. We could be allies. There is a war coming, Carnage, and he wants to know which side Carnage is going to be on. So Carnage, in a Carnage-like way, screams and tells him, mine, and then goes to attack Meridius again. This time though, Meridius was ready and stabs him straight through the chest again. Then Meridius is trying to push him to the brink, right? Because he knows that he has something up his sleeve and he's intending to find out what that thing is. But Carnage is trying to reject it. He ends up breaking off one of his horns in the process until Meridius once again says, enough, and knocks him back to the point where he knocks him into the pond with the K chemicals. Then Meridius pushes him further and further under, which by the way is also causing Meridius pain. Carnage knows that if he lets this thing continue to go on here, it's ultimately going to kill him. So Carnage plays the only card that he has right now, which is to pull out the all blood, the Necro Spear, and then he stabs Meridius right in the chest with it. So Cletus is yelling for Carnage to end it and to kill him, but Carnage just pulls the spear back out and tells Meridius, remember this, Meridius, I let you live. So Meridius tries to plead with Carnage and tells him, I will give you what you want. But Carnage just replies, you don't know what I want, Meridius, which we know already from the main Venom War storyline. He wants Eddie Brock on a pitchfork. He wants Eddie Brock's soul. So later on, we see Cletus Cassidy and the Carnage symbiote talking. Cletus is upset because Carnage didn't kill Meridius. Cletus wants Carnage to let this Venom War thing and the whole K project stuff go, and just to go back to whatever it was before. But Carnage thinks that this whole situation is just too big. The war is coming no matter whether or not Cletus likes it, but Cletus is just like, I just want to return back to the fun. To him, enslaving symbiotes and humans is not fun for him. He thinks the world has so much more under the surface. Why not focus on that? The real world, all the red, the raw, and the senselessness. How this is their world, how he does not want it to change. But simply put, Carnage does. So that puts them at a crossroad here as Cletus decides that he's had enough. So he removes himself from the Carnage symbiote, but Carnage is telling him, don't be a fool. I made you. You need me to live. But Cletus is like, are you sure? You need me more than I need you, Carnage, and find me when you're done playing God. And as Cletus goes, so does Carnage's joy. And all that remains right now is his fury, is the agony, and the promise of Carnage. And all I could think, guys, is just like how Carnage is gonna go ahead and lose Cletus again. Like, my goodness. But what did you guys think about this one here? Leave it down below in the comments. Check out our playlist over here to catch up on this Venom War series, including all the Venom War Carnage issues before this one. Leave a like on this video here to help out this video to reach a wider audience. Subscribe if new to the channel. And as always, guys, thank you so much for kicking it with Keepin the Comic.